Hey, welcome to Business Opportunities Live. And today, our special guest is Alan Tratner, Professor Alan Tratner from Green to Gold. Some of you may have seen Alan on our episode a couple of weeks ago. We're going to talk a little bit more about who Green to Gold is in just a minute. And I just want to share, in the day before I'm doing a little bit of I've been a little annoyed about the way things have been going and how greedy some companies have been with this money that we've designated for small business. And early this week on Monday, the new funds became available for the payroll protection program, and a lot of folks are jumping in to get their applications finished and filled out and submitted. And if you haven't done it yet, do not hesitate. Do it right now. As we knew by the first program, they've been so overwhelmed by applications that getting approvals is really taking something. In addition to the approvals taking something and taking a lot of time, if you're too late and the money runs out, then there's nothing. So I really invite you, if you're interested in those programs, don't hesitate. Run, don't walk. Go to the websites for your banks and where you can apply for the payroll protection program and the EIDL money, and do it now. Many of you have probably gotten advances. Those advances are advances against these programs. So if you don't have an application for one of these programs in, you're probably going to have to pay that advance back. If you use that advance money for the payroll protection program, then that advance money will likely be forgiven, and it'll be more like a grant and less like a loan. So I just want to make sure everybody's on top of that. So I'm going to shift back and talk about Alan and what he's done. In the last week, Alan, who helped found who founded Green to Gold and was at the very first Earth Day in 70 or 72?
1970. We were all involved in the first environmental teach-in, the creation of Earth Day. And this past week on April 22nd, which always marks each year Earth Day around the world, we had the 50th anniversary. And I was so disappointed at first because we had planned to do hundreds of thousands of people in Los Angeles, Hollywood, had a whole plan to do an amazing event about action for Earth Day around the world. That was the theme this year, was really to take action. And more than a billion people were mobilized, and 100+ countries were mobilized, and all shut down because of COVID-19. But to make up for that, I was lucky enough to be invited onto not one, but two shows that were planetary in scope. One was a planetary summit on the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and it was led by the famous astronaut Ron Garan and a bunch of famous musicians and movers and shakers and scientists and philosophers, and they invited me on as a special guest at the very beginning and throughout the whole period of 2 hours long for the world broadcast. And it was about how Earth Day got started, and then asking everybody on this 50th birthday what they thought Earth Day was all about. And with my input to what caused this to happen, the protests of the 1960s, civil rights, anti-war, stopping atomic weapons, so everything that happened in the 60s, such an incredible decade that led up to 1969. We landed on the moon, and mankind saw the planet for the first time, and got a real feel for this humble home that we have that's our life support system. And also the major catastrophe up in Santa Barbara that caused the modern environmental movement, the blowout of the Union platform. And I was up there and just crying along with the other volunteers that day on the beach and cleaning up the birds and seeing the fish, and they're all dying, and we were all in tears, and we said enough is enough. And so when Senator Gaylord Nelson proposed, why don't 1970, April 22nd in the spring, why don't we have an environmental teach-in, and it got named Earth Day. And it was the beginning. What people don't realize, it isn't just a memorial holiday of once a year. It caused that year the Environmental Protection Agency to be actually caused, the Clean Air Water Acts, the Endangered Species Acts. It was the most amazing year. In that same year is when we founded the Environmental Education Group, our 501c3 scientific research foundation, and the Green to Gold Incubator, which, as we mentioned last time, I think is the longest living, continuously operating incubator on the planet, was Green to Gold, about environmental entrepreneurship, environmental inventing, innovation, and nonprofits. And that's how we are. And so in the 50th year, we're action oriented, no longer having to teach about it. Everybody knows about climate change and all the issues facing, and now the COVID health and economic crisis. So we're pushing about the green economy in a big way, about how everyone could transition and be into sustainability and the green economy. Inventors, entrepreneurs, small businesses, nonprofits. There isn't anybody that shouldn't be moving toward this green economy. Take this opportunity that everyone's at a standstill and waiting to get out of this, to revision what we're doing on this planet so we can be more sustainable and green, halt climate change, have more green, good jobs, have lift up the rest of the planet that's suffering and poverty and everything else. And here's our chance to do it. One of the questions that was posed by one of the other people on that planetary summit was, how come the Boeing CEO doesn't take a look at where they are right now with all their fleets literally, sequestered on the ground, and 95% of the air travel not happening. And I came back and I said, what I think they should do is take the lead of Sir Richard Branson and Virgin and think about converting all their fleets to bio-based fuels that are not jet fuel, that is causing all the vapors and pollution and everything in the sky. What a transition that would be for a major sector of this economy, and get them into a renewable, sustainable situation that's not at the sacrifice of the oil industry, which, by the way, has collapsed right now. And very interesting. So when you think about investing and you think about entrepreneurship and opportunity, the green economy is incredible. And so action items right now should take foothold. And a lot of governments want that to happen. They're pushing for that. And why? Because everybody wakes up nowadays in the rest of the world and sees what a clean world would look like during this respite of pollution. And they're saying, wow, we can see the mountains behind Los Angeles. And in Italy and other places, they're just knocked out by the fact that the Venice Canal has jellyfish in it, and they can't even believe this stuff. And this is what mankind's been doing, and to the point that we're catastrophically affecting climate. So my big deal is the green economy in innovation and invention and entrepreneurship, and the opportunities that are there. And that's why impact investing is growing to such an extent.
So Alan, let's take a look at one of those things really quick. I remember when buying products and services that were good for the planet cost so much more that it just wasn't competitive. And a lot of organizations that did it because they were on a mission. And now there's so much that's being done in the green economy. Now it is very cost effective. And when people look at, do I go with solar or conventional? Do I go with biofuel or regular fuel? And they look at the cost of these items, they're starting to see that it's actually not just cost effective, they can save money with a lot of these technologies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, take the project that we're working with Larry Parsons on, right? Where he's got the ability to convert diesel fuel in the maritime industry into high-performing fuel that saves ships money. Oh, by the way, it reduces global greenhouse gases.
Yeah, and pollution on the waterways, one of the major sectors, all these gigantic shipping fleets and everything else. It is an amazing opportunity right now. And I'm thrilled to be helping you with with Steel Environmental. This is a new, and they're staging this. They're thinking about the future, that they move from the catalyst proprietary technology into the biofuels, even based on hemp of all things, hemp waste and all those crops, and then moving into what ultimately will be one of the major solutions is hydrogen. Because how weird is it that ships are in the medium, they transport and move in the medium that can actually fuel them. Which
wouldn't it be amazing to actually see a hydrogen power plant built on a ship? They're large enough, aren't they?
Yeah, and by the way, it isn't. They can be fuel cells, but it could be the combustion of hydrogen, just like they've been doing in cars and other types of vehicles. But it is just smart to think in 3 stages. What could we do to fix where we are right now in transition? What could we move to that makes a big difference? And then what's the big payoff in a longer time frame? And that's what people should be thinking about when they innovate. There is a hunger in this world from the venture side, investor side, governments, even consumers. There's studies done by of the millennials that while they want to make a lot of money and retire quickly, which is funny, they also, when they spend their money, they want to have impact. They want to see social, environmental good come from that. And that's now starting to color all those decisions that mass marketers are making in companies. So I concur with you. This is a ripe opportunity. And it used to be, when we first started Eco Expo in the 1990s, the National Marketplace for the Environment, went around the whole country, had the likes of John Denver with us, bless his heart, and Ted Danson and the whole Cheers crew, and lots of entertainers, Steven Seagal and all that. What was happening is that people at that time were classified into 3 categories. They were called the browns, the greens, and the whites. Okay, so at that time in the 90s, when we were doing the National Marketplace for the Environment, 50,000 people coming in over a weekend looking at exhibits, all these new products that were green and sustainable. The economic thing you pointed out was as follows. If you cared more about helping the planet, you were a green, consumer. If you cared about helping the planet, but you were price sensitive, then you were a brown. And if you didn't give a crap about the planet, you were just price sensitive anyway, you were white. But that's all changed. It's kind of flip-flop now. And you made it clear in your statement. It is competitive now in almost every field of sustainability and green tech and clean tech and energy. Wind is cheaper than coal. And all the stuff that everybody was forecasting was going to be unrealistic and undoable has dramatically changed. And it's true. Consumers, business, commercial, government purchases, there's military purchases are all going in the way that the investment now pays off not only now, but also for the long range. When you do and recycling, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's not only that, it's also that, during and a lot of people, you have to be old enough to remember the oil embargo that occurred in the 70s and early 80s. And remember how we were waiting online to buy gas for hours, right? And it's about our energy independence. Right now, just look at what's happened. The oil market has crashed. It's through the floor. I don't know if it's a little bit over zero per barrel, but it used to be negatively before.
Yeah.
Right? So other countries can not only influence but manipulate us based on what they do around oil. But with all of these other options we now have, we've taken our energy and made ourselves a bit more independent. Now, I don't know if we'll ever get to where their moves can't hurt our country in the way they still can today. But certainly because we're not driving that much, we're in a position where, I can't believe this. I paid $1.79 a gallon in Glendale. I paid $1.70. Now, it helped that I had my rewards card, right? Because I got $1 off because of that. But Alan, do you remember the last time you paid a price like that for gas?
Yes. Listen, during the 60s, I remember buying it was funny, I had that when I went up to Santa Barbara for the oil spill. I had a Honda Step Through 50. You meet the nicest people on Honda, the campaign. And it was the 250cc, got more than 225 miles per gallon. When I was going to high school, I put a gallon in and went for weeks running on that sucker, but the funniest thing is that you mentioned the oil buy embargo, because that's one of the things that also catapulted me to some fame, because that day when it was closed down, those long lines and everybody was pulling their hair out and the government didn't know what to do, and there was a show right after the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson called The Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder, kind of popular. He was a kind of a rusky guy smoking and everything, but it was cool. And he went and tried to get the government to come on and talk about alternatives, and nobody would come on. And a producer at NBC remembered me in my slideshow about energy solutions, and they whisked me down to NBC, and I went on the show and brought my humble little slideshow and talked about all the solutions of alternative energy there were. And the next day, Pepperdine University wanted to hire me as the professor of environment energy, and the farmers across the country, because I talked about farm sustainable bio-based economy. It was just a funny catapult for that embargo. And that was Jimmy Carter's period, and he was pushing for energy independence, but they couldn't get it through. And now there's a chance in this new election to have the green economy really pushed and really make a big, every fossil fuel can be substituted with green energy nowadays.
That's the point, right?
Different. I mean, for every use in vehicles and aircraft and ships, in farms, in everything we do, in air conditioning, home energy. There's 1 million solar roofs planned right now for houses. And if we go that direction, in this opportunity, this break we have in this disastrous economic situation, healthy situation, if governments work with business and the consumers, we can remake this future. We can have the utopia that everybody's been dreaming of.
Well, not only that, Alan, we also get to be energy independent, because where do the biofuels come from? Just take a look.
We're one of the largest agricultural entities on the planet.
Exactly. California is a boom for biofuel. And not just that, since the marijuana industry has grown so tremendously, they've got a huge amount of waste that can be converted to biofuel.
And I want people to understand that isn't a substitute for food. This is from the waste materials that normally are caused, burned, or whatever, that all this bioenergy, biodiesel, biofuels can be converted. You can make plastics nowadays out of everything, corn and wheat and hemp and things like that. New plastics that are not petroleum based. So they're recyclable, they're good for the environment. There is such an opportunity in the green economy. Part of what we're doing.
Alan, think about all of the waste that's not going into landfills.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I always looked at landfills as the gold mines of the future, that we would go in there with machinery that's already extant, and we would just mine that and recycle everything and get the fuels, get the organic waste for ag, get all the other materials converted into other products. That in a sense, we could stop filling landfills and mine the landfills and return them back to their original state.
Well,
there is such opportunity.
I had a conversation with Ken Phillips about a project he's working on that actually will put equipment in the landfills to take the landfill waste and convert it to usable energy. Right. And in doing that, begin eliminating waste from landfills and putting power on the grid. Again, all of these things to be energy independent, to bring our cost of energy down, to make sure that we're not in a position like we are right now with oil where another country can manipulate us.
Yeah, we don't want to be vulnerable anymore. And it isn't that we don't have the solutions. We have all the options, solutions, just the willpower. Government, everyone coming together and say, this is the decision we're going to do. By 2030, we want to be energy independent. Why not? We can do it if we pull together. Listen, if we could go to the moon from scratch, in Kennedy's proposal in 10 years, we can do, and they're even talking about a Manhattan Project for COVID to solve it. That kind of an effort would put our country into total independence and economic sustainability. It would be just incredible. And I think it's just the leaders. This election coming up could be pretty dramatic for the United States.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, all the things we're talking about here will go a long way to paying down the national debt from where we are.
By the way, it's over $3 trillion. It's more than our GDP, I guess. But we knew that was going to happen.
Conversation. So, Alan, listen, I just want to wrap up here. This is really invigorating, this conversation. I do want to ask before we wrap, though, you're talking to a lot of investors, and what's their mood in this economy today?
Okay, I think like 2 weeks ago or whatever, 2 months ago, when we did your program.
Yeah.
At that time, we had done a barometer, and I had told you that we had done a research study on the growth of businesses, small businesses in the United States. At that time, it was still hitting 55,000 new businesses every month. It's gone up to 65,000 every month. So
during this period, it's grown from 55.
Yeah, it's already grown in just that month or so that we last talked. The entrepreneurship worldwide is soaring. The demand for incubators is soaring, okay? And that's why we're being called to do different ones in this country and abroad. But I will tell you, when we did the barometer on our investors that are around the world, every kind of funding, debt funding, equity funding, crowdfunding, you name it, what we were told, and it's still true, is that hasn't stopped. Ventures and funding for that, angels and venture groups and all those want new ideas, want brilliant, differentiated ideas. They're looking for that breakthrough. They're hungry for that. But the one thing that still remains true is that whatever you're asking for in your pitch for funding, don't expect the full amount. Now, you think that you're going to have to shop it around and get other people to contribute. We're holding back on some full bore investments, but even up in Silicon Valley, I talked to the people in several high-tech angel groups and venture groups, and they said, we're still looking, we're still investing, we're still looking to go liquid and exit and take that money and turn it into more investment. So just be cautious about the ask, be cautious about the time frame, because everybody's kind of low. Most of the angel venture groups that held monthly meetings or quarterly meetings aren't holding those. They're moving to virtual, which is a little awkward for them. But those pitch deck competitions in various cities and around the world, just be patient. But there's still people out there. There's a lot of money in different entities. Of all things, cannabis and hemp is still growing, and high technology is still growing, and green technology and renewable energy is growing. So, there are lots of opportunities to innovate, invent, be entrepreneurs. And so I think just be cautious. Don't get your hopes up for total money falling right into your hands. It'll be probably shopped around, which is kind of fine to spread the risk around to other groups.
It is. And Alan, I just want to say, so I want to let you all know, I've been working with Alan and one of my clients. We talked about Larry a little while ago. And Alan has a process that when you work inside of it, you will have a presentation for investors that's crisp, it's clear, all of the services from the Green to Gold Incubator that you can get at a much lower cost than what's out in the marketplace are available. Everything from attorney services to consulting and a place to find co-founders. Like, all of that exists. So I invite you guys, if you have any questions, Alan's email is right here on the screen. Go ahead and shoot him an email. I'm sure he'd be happy to connect with you. And Alan, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure, and so always fun to get with you on these conversations and talk about what's possible, how to get there, and just the state of events that got us here too. You're such a rich wealth of knowledge, and you bring the future vision into such clarity with the basis of how we got here, which so many people are missing. So I just want to acknowledge you for that and thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the fact that you're having me come on these shows. It's a delight for me, and you're sharp as all heck. So it's fun to work with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alan, and everyone. Great having you. We'll have Alan back again in a couple weeks, and we'll look forward to seeing you too. So have a great day.
Stay safe, everybody.